They had been watching Earth for nearly 200 years. They had seen humans discover fire in metal tubes and shoot themselves into the sky. They had seen them land on their moon and plant flags in the dust. They had watched them build cities that touched the clouds and weapons that could burn entire nations to ash. They were old. They were patient. And they had seen this pattern many times before with many different species across the galaxy. High Observer sat in his command chamber aboard the observation vessel called the Quiet Eye. The ship was hidden in the cold darkness beyond the eighth planet of the human solar system. From here, they could watch everything, every transmission, every launch, every war and every peace treaty. The humans did not know they were being observed. They believed they were alone in the universe, intended to keep it that way for as long as possible. Scholar entered the chamber with a data crystal in his thin gray fingers. His eyes glowed with soft blue light as he approached the High Observer. Was young by standards, only 400 years old, and he had spent most of his life studying primitive species. But humans troubled him. They did not fit the patterns he had learned. High Observer said, "The humans have done something unexpected." Did not look up from his viewing screen. They always do something unexpected. That is what makes them interesting. This is different. Place the data crystal into a slot on the console. The screen flickered and changed. It showed the orbital space above Earth, where dozens of stations and platforms floated in careful formation. But there was something new among them. A ship. A massive ship that had not been there before. Leaned forward. His stone-like face showed no emotion, but his eyes narrowed slightly. "What am I looking at?" "They are calling it the USS Sentinel. It is a military vessel, a warship. All species build warships. The humans have had naval vessels for centuries." "Not like this." Touched the screen and the image zoomed closer. The ship was unlike anything the humans had built before. It was armored with thick plates of metal and composite materials. Weapon ports lined its sides like the teeth of some great predator. Sensor arrays and communication dishes covered its surface. And at its heart, barely visible through the hull plating, was an engine system that made very nervous. "They have developed faster-than-light capability," he said quietly. "This ship can travel between stars." Was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy. "That should not be possible. Our projections showed they were still 3 centuries away from interstellar travel." "Our projections were wrong." Sub-Commander, who had been standing silently near the door, stepped forward. She was a warrior by training, not a scholar, and she understood the meaning of what she was seeing better than anyone in the room. "That ship is not built for exploration. Look at the weapon placements. Look at the armor distribution. It is built to fight. It is built to kill." Nodded slowly. "The question is, who do they expect to fight? They do not know we exist. They do not know about the other powers in the galaxy. So why would they build such a thing?" Had an answer, though he was not sure would like it. "Because they expect to find enemies. They have learned from their own history that the universe is not kind to the weak. They are preparing for threats they have not yet discovered." That is either very wise or very foolish. Perhaps both. The watched as the USS Sentinel completed its final preparations. Crew members moved through its corridors. Supplies were loaded into its cargo bays. And on its bridge, a human male named Daniel Price took his position in the command chair for the first time. They did not know his name yet. They did not know anything about him except that he was the one chosen to lead this mission. But they would learn. They always learned everything about the species they watched. Commander Daniel Price was 43 years old. He had served in the United States Navy for 20 years before being selected for the new Space Command Division. He had fought in 3 wars and lost friends in all of them. He had a wife and 2 children back on Earth, and he had promised them he would return safely. But he knew, deep in his heart, that this mission might be different from anything humanity had ever attempted. "All stations report ready," said Lieutenant Commander Grant. She was his executive officer, a woman with sharp eyes and a sharper mind. She had been with him for 5 years, and he trusted her more than anyone else in the fleet. "Engineering?" Daniel asked. Moore's voice came through the communication system. He was down in the engine room, surrounded by machines that bent the laws of physics in ways that still made scientists nervous. "All systems are green, Commander. The drive is stable. We are ready to make history." Daniel allowed himself a small smile. "Let us hope history is kind to us." The Sentinel moved away from the orbital station. Earth hung below them, blue and green and beautiful. Daniel looked at it through the viewport and felt a strange mix of pride and fear. They were about to take humanity's first step into the wider galaxy. They had no idea what they would find out there. "Set course for Tau," Daniel ordered. "Engage faster-than-light drive on my mark." Entered the coordinates into the navigation system. Carter, the weapons officer, ran one final check on the defensive systems. Brooks, the communications specialist, monitored the frequencies for any last-minute messages from Earth Command. And far away, hidden in the darkness, High Observer watched. "They are leaving their system," said. "Should we follow them?" Considered the question carefully. They had rules about this. They were not supposed to interfere with developing species. They were only supposed to observe and record. But rules were made for normal situations, and this was not normal. A primitive species had just built a warship capable of traveling between stars. That changed everything. "Yes," said, "we follow them, but we stay hidden. I want to see what they do when they think no one is watching." The Quiet Eye powered up its own engines and slipped into the darkness after the human vessel. Two ships, moving through the void between stars, one aware of the other, one completely blind. The first encounter was coming, though neither side knew exactly when or how it would happen. Daniel Price watched the stars stretch into lines as the Sentinel jumped into faster-than-light travel. The journey had begun, and somewhere out there, answers were waiting. The jump through faster-than-light space lasted exactly 14 hours. For most of the crew, it felt like being wrapped in a blanket made of static electricity. Their skin tingled. Their teeth ached. Some reported strange dreams during the short sleep cycles they managed to steal. But when the Sentinel dropped back into normal space, all discomfort was forgotten. They had arrived at Tau, a star system 14 light-years from Earth. No human had ever been this far from home. Commander Daniel Price stood at the main viewport and stared at the alien sun. It was slightly smaller than Earth's sun, with a pale yellow light that seemed somehow softer. 3 planets were visible from their position, rocky worlds that the long-range telescopes had spotted years ago. Scientists back home had debated for decades whether any of them might support life. Now Daniel and his crew would find out for themselves. "Begin full sensor sweep," he ordered. "I want to know everything about this system, every rock, every moon, every signal." Lieutenant Commander Grant coordinated the scan teams. Data began flowing into the ship's computers within minutes. The planets were barren, at least on first inspection. No atmosphere on the first 2. The third had a thin layer of gases that might once have supported primitive life, but nothing remained now except dust and ancient craters. But it was not the planets that caught their attention. It was what floated between them. "Commander," said Carter from the weapons station, "I am picking up artificial structures throughout the outer system. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds." Daniel turned sharply. "Artificial, you mean built by someone?" "Yes, sir. They are too regular to be natural formations. Some appear to be relay stations of some kind. Others look like observation platforms, and there are ships, at least 12 vessels, all holding position in a loose formation." The bridge went silent. Every crew member understood what this meant. They were not alone. They had never been alone. Someone else was out here, and that someone had technology far beyond anything humanity had imagined. Brooks worked frantically at her communications console. "I am detecting encrypted transmissions between the structures. The language is completely unknown, but the pattern suggests organized communication. Whoever built these things is still using them. Daniel felt his heart beating faster, but he forced himself to remain calm. His crew was looking to him for guidance. If he showed fear, they would fear. If he showed strength, they would find their own strength. Can you determine if they have detected us? Shook her head. Unknown, sir. Their encryption is too advanced for me to break. We could be completely invisible to them, or they could have spotted us the moment we arrived. Assume the worst, said quietly. If they have been here long enough to build all of this, they probably have sensors that make ours look like children's toys. Daniel nodded. She was right. The smart move would be to turn around and go home, report their findings to Earth Command. Let the politicians and scientists decide what to do next, but something told him that running was not the answer. If these beings had been watching humanity, they already knew where Earth was. Retreating would only show weakness. Power up all defensive systems, he said. Do not arm weapons but have them ready. We will hold position and see what happens. The waiting was the hardest part. Minutes passed, then an hour. The crew remained at their stations, eyes fixed on their screens, searching for any sign of movement from the alien structures. Some of them whispered prayers under their breath. Others simply stared into the darkness and tried not to think about how far they were from everything they had ever known. Moore came up from engineering. His face was pale but determined. Commander, I need to tell you something. The drive performed better than expected during the jump, but we burned more fuel than projected. If we need to make a fast exit, we might not have enough to get all the way home. Daniel absorbed this information without changing his expression. How much of a shortfall? About 15%. We could make it to one of the outer colonies, maybe, but Earth is out of reach unless we find a way to refuel. Understood. Keep that information between us for now. The crew has enough to worry about. Moore nodded and returned to his station. Daniel turned back to the viewport. Out there, somewhere in the darkness, someone was watching. He could feel it. The same instinct that had kept him alive in 3 wars was screaming at him now. They were not alone. They were being studied. The first sign came 20 minutes later. One of the alien ships moved. It was subtle at first, just a slight shift in position that the sensors almost missed. But then another ship moved, and another. They were changing formation, spreading out in a pattern that looked very much like an encirclement. They see us, said. They definitely see us. Steady, Daniel replied. No sudden moves, let them come to us. The alien vessel that approached was beautiful in a strange and terrifying way. It shimmered as it moved, its hull reflecting light in patterns that seemed almost organic. It was larger than the Sentinel, perhaps twice the size, but it carried no visible weapons. That could mean it was a peaceful explorer, or it could mean its weapons were hidden inside that shimmering hull. Its console lit up with incoming signals. Commander, they are transmitting. It is a mathematical sequence, prime numbers, universal constants. I think it is a greeting. Daniel took a deep breath. This was the moment humanity had dreamed about and feared for centuries. First contact with an intelligent alien species. Everything they did in the next few minutes would shape the future of their entire civilization. Respond in kind, he said. Send back the next prime in the sequence. Let them know we understand. Transmitted the response. The alien ship stopped moving. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the shimmering hull seemed to shift, and a section of it became transparent. Through that window, Daniel could see a figure standing on what appeared to be a command deck. It was tall and thin, with skin like polished stone and eyes that glowed with soft blue light. The being raised one hand in a gesture that might have been a greeting. Daniel raised his own hand in response. Across the void of space, 2 civilizations looked at each other for the first time. One was ancient and patient. The other was young and fierce. Neither knew yet what the other truly was, but both understood that nothing would ever be the same again. The alien being spoke. The words meant nothing to Daniel but was already working on a translation. Within minutes, she had a rough interpretation. They are calling themselves the Collective. They say they have been watching us for a very long time, and they want to talk. Daniel straightened his shoulders and prepared to speak for all of humanity. Tell them we are listening. First formal communication between humanity and the Collective lasted 6 hours. It was conducted through video screens and translation software that Brooks had to rebuild 3 times before it worked properly. By the end, everyone on the bridge of the Sentinel was exhausted, confused, and deeply unsettled by what they had learned. High Observer was patient in his explanations. He spoke slowly and clearly, giving the human translation systems time to process his words. He seemed almost amused by the humans, like an adult watching children discover something obvious for the first time. "We have observed your species for 187 of your years," said. His stone-like face showed no emotion, but his glowing blue eyes never left Commander Price. "We detected your first radio transmissions and sent observation vessels to investigate. Since then, we have watched your development with great interest." Daniel kept his voice steady. "Why did you never make contact?" "Because you were not ready. The Collective has protocols for first contact. We wait until a species demonstrates certain qualities before we reveal ourselves. Unified government, peaceful resolution of internal conflicts, a commitment to cooperation over competition. And we do not meet those standards." Tilted his head slightly. "You are one of the most violent species we have ever observed. Your history is filled with wars, genocides, and destruction. You fight each other over resources, territory, beliefs, and sometimes for no reason at all. By our standards, you should still be 1,000 years away from interstellar travel, and yet here you are." Grant stepped forward. Her eyes were hard. "If we are so primitive, why are you talking to us now?" "Because you built that ship," gestured toward the Sentinel, visible through the transparent wall of the vessel. "We have watched thousands of species develop. They build exploration vessels, science platforms, transport ships, but you built a warship, a vessel designed for combat. That changes things." "Changes things how?" Was silent for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was heavier. "The galaxy is not empty, Commander Price. There are many civilizations out here, some ancient, some young. Most of them live in peace, following rules that have existed for millions of years. But there are also powers that enforce those rules, powers that watch for species that might threaten the order of things." Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. "What kind of powers?" "The greatest is called the Dominion of. They are old beyond your understanding. They believe that aggressive species must be controlled or eliminated before they can cause harm to others. When they see a young civilization building weapons of war, they act. They destroy them. Sometimes, other times they contain them, limit their technology, prevent them from spreading beyond their home system. The Dominion has many methods and they are not known for mercy." The bridge of the Sentinel was completely silent. Every crew member understood what was saying. Humanity had just painted a target on itself. By building the Sentinel, by developing faster-than-light travel before they were supposed to, they had attracted the attention of something far more dangerous than the... Brooks found her voice first. "How long do we have?" "Unknown. The Dominion moves at its own pace. They may already be aware of your presence here. They may have been watching you even longer than we have, or they may not have noticed you yet. There is no way to know for certain." Daniel stepped closer to the screen. "What can we do?" Studied him for a long moment. "That is a question I cannot answer. They have survived by being useful to the Dominion. We observe, we record, we share information. We do not threaten anyone, but you are different. Your ship tells me that you are not a species that submits easily. Perhaps that will save you. Perhaps it will doom you." The communication ended shortly after that. The vessel retreated to a safe distance, though it remained in the system, watching. had agreed to send a cultural ambassador to the Sentinel to help establish better understanding between the two species. His name was Scholar, and he arrived within the hour. Was younger than, with lighter gray skin and eyes that held genuine curiosity rather than cold assessment. He walked through the corridors of the Sentinel with obvious fascination, studying everything from the light fixtures to the fire extinguishers. "Your technology is crude but effective," he said to, who had been assigned to escort him. "You have achieved much with limited resources." Was not sure if that was a compliment or an insult. She decided to treat it as a compliment. "We work with what we have." "That is perhaps your greatest strength." Paused in front of a display showing Earth, transmitted from the ship's data banks. The blue planet hung in the blackness of space, beautiful and fragile. "I have studied your world for many years. I know your history, your wars, your achievements. You should have destroyed yourselves 100 times over, but you survived. You always survived." "Is that unusual?" "Very. Most species that experience the level of conflict you have either destroy themselves or evolve into something more peaceful. You did neither. You remained violent, but you also remained alive. That is a rare combination." Thought about that for a moment. Maybe we learned that violence is not always the answer, but sometimes it is the only answer. Looked at her with something that might have been respect. The Dominion will not understand that perspective. They believe all violence is a disease that must be cured. They will see your warship and draw their conclusions. "And what conclusions have you drawn?" Before could answer, alarms began screaming throughout the ship. Red lights flashed in every corridor. The calm of the conversation shattered as crew members rushed to their stations. Carter's voice came over the ship's communication system, tight with barely controlled fear. "Commander, to the bridge immediately. We have incoming contacts. 3 vessels, massive in size, just dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. They are heading straight for us." Daniel was on the bridge within 2 minutes. He looked at the sensor display and felt his blood turn cold. The 3 ships were enormous, each one at least 10 times the size of the Sentinel. They were covered in weapon ports and sensor arrays, and they were approaching at a speed that should have been impossible. "The Dominion," said quietly from behind him, "they have found you." Daniel turned to his crew. Every face showed fear but also determination. They had known this might happen. They had prepared for this possibility. Now they would see if their preparation was enough. "Battle stations," he ordered. "All hands prepare for contact." Dominion vessels moved through space like predators closing in on wounded prey. They did not hurry. They did not need to. Their sensors had already mapped every inch of the Sentinel, identified every weapon system, calculated every possible escape route. The humans had nowhere to run. Commander Daniel Price watched them approach on the main display. His hands were steady, but his mind was racing through options that grew fewer with each passing second. The observation fleet had vanished the moment the Dominion arrived, disappearing into faster-than-light travel without so much as a farewell message. He could not blame them. When gods came to judge, even the wise knew to step aside. "What do we know about these ships?" he asked. Grant pulled up the tactical analysis. "Almost nothing, Commander. Their hull composition is unlike anything in our database. Our sensors cannot penetrate their outer shielding. I cannot even tell you how many crew members they carry." "Weapons." "I am detecting at least 40 weapon ports on each vessel. Energy signatures suggest they are fully charged and ready to fire. If they open up on us, our shields will not last more than a few seconds." Carter looked up from his station. His face was pale, but his voice was steady. "Commander, I can target their engine sections. If we hit them first, we might disable one of them before they return fire." "And then what? The other 2 destroy us anyway." Daniel shook his head. "No, we do not fire first. If we are going to die here, we are not going to die as aggressors." Scholar had remained on the bridge despite the chaos. He stood near the back of the room, watching the humans with something like admiration. "The Dominion will appreciate that choice," he said quietly. "They value restraint. Do they value it enough to let us live?" "That depends on what you say to them." A signal came through the communication system. Brooks analyzed it quickly. "They are hailing us, Commander, audio and video. Do you want me to accept?" Daniel straightened his uniform and took a breath. "Put them through." The main display flickered and changed. The face that appeared was unlike anything Daniel had ever seen. The being called itself Archon, commander of the Dominion Enforcement Fleet. Its body was massive, covered in ceremonial armor that looked like it had been forged from the hearts of dying stars. Its eyes were black pools that reflected nothing, and when it spoke, its voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "You are the commander of this vessel," said. It was not a question. "You are responsible for bringing a weapon of war into this region of space." Daniel nodded. "I am Commander Daniel Price of the United States Space Command. This is the USS Sentinel, and yes, I am responsible for it. Your species was not scheduled to achieve interstellar capability for another 300 cycles. You were supposed to remain confined to your home system until you demonstrated the maturity required for expansion. Instead, you have built a warship and violated the natural order of development." "We did not know there was a natural order. We did not know anyone was watching." "Ignorance is not a defense," leaned forward slightly. "The Dominion has maintained peace in this galaxy for longer than your species has existed. We have seen civilizations rise and fall. We have seen aggressive species bring destruction to countless worlds. Our purpose is to prevent such disasters before they occur." Daniel felt the weight of that statement pressing down on him. The Dominion was not just powerful, it was ancient. It had been doing this for millions of years, judging species, deciding who would be allowed to grow and who would be cut down before they could cause harm. "What happens now?" he asked. "That depends on you. Your species has been classified as a potential threat. Your history shows patterns of violence that are consistent with dangerous civilizations. Your first interstellar vessel is a warship, which confirms our assessment. Under normal circumstances, we would contain your species immediately, disable your technology, prevent you from leaving your home system, perhaps destroy your industrial capacity entirely. And if these are not normal circumstances." Paused. For a moment something flickered in those black eyes. Curiosity, perhaps, or simply amusement. "You are bold, Commander. That is either courage or stupidity. I have not yet decided which." Daniel took a step closer to the screen. "Then let me help you decide. Yes, we built a warship. Yes, our history is full of violence, but that violence has taught us something. It has taught us that survival requires strength. Not cruelty, not conquest, but the ability to protect ourselves when protection is needed. We did not come out here looking for enemies. We came looking for answers, for knowledge, for a chance to be part of something larger than ourselves." Pretty words, but words are easy. Actions reveal truth. "Then judge us by our actions. We did not fire on the when we discovered them. We opened communication instead. We did not run when your ships appeared. We held our ground and waited for you to speak first. We are a young species, yes. We have made mistakes, but we learn from those mistakes. That is what makes us different from the civilizations you have destroyed." Was silent for a long moment. The bridge of the Sentinel seemed frozen in time. No one moved. No one breathed. Everything depended on what the Archon said next. "The Dominion has destroyed 4,000 civilizations over the past 10 million years," finally said. "Each one was given the same choice you are being given now. Most chose defiance. They believed their weapons could protect them. They believed their courage would save them. They were wrong. And the others, the ones who were not destroyed, they proved themselves worthy of survival, not through strength of arms but through strength of character. They showed us that they could grow beyond their violent origins. They became partners instead of threats." Daniel felt a flicker of hope. How do we prove ourselves? Did not answer immediately. Instead, the Archon's black eyes swept across the bridge of the Sentinel, taking in the faces of the crew. Humans of different backgrounds, different histories, all standing together in the face of annihilation. Some were afraid, some were angry, but none of them were running. Perhaps, said slowly, you have already begun. The Dominion vessels powered down their weapons, not completely, not in a way that suggested trust, but enough to signal that the immediate threat of destruction had passed, for now. We will be watching you, Commander Price. Your species has earned a reprieve, not a pardon. What you do with this chance will determine your future. Do not waste it. The communication ended. The display returned to showing the three massive vessels still hovering in formation around the Sentinel. They had not left. They were still watching, but they were no longer aiming. Grant let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. Did we just survive? Daniel looked at the stars beyond the viewport. Somewhere out there, the Dominion was making notes about humanity, recording their responses, evaluating their potential. The test was not over. It was only beginning. For now, he said, we survived for now. Dominion vessels remained in the Tau system for 3 more days. They did not communicate again. They did not approach the Sentinel. They simply watched, their massive hulls hanging in the darkness like silent judges waiting to deliver a verdict. Every moment of those 3 days felt like a lifetime to the crew. Commander Daniel Price used the time wisely. He met with Scholar repeatedly, learning everything he could about the galaxy they had stumbled into. The picture that emerged was both fascinating and terrifying. The Milky Way was home to over 400 spacefaring civilizations, most of them far older and more advanced than humanity. They lived under a system of rules and hierarchies that had been established millions of years ago, with the Dominion at the top. They are not evil, explained during one of their conversations. They genuinely believe they are protecting the galaxy from harm, and in many ways they are correct. The species they have destroyed were often genuinely dangerous, but their methods leave no room for growth or redemption. Once they decide a species is a threat, that decision is final. Except for us, Daniel said. Except for you. His glowing eyes studied the human commander with renewed interest. I have never seen them hesitate before. Whatever you said to Archon made an impression. I told them the truth, that is all. Perhaps that is what made the difference. Most species lie when facing destruction. They promise to change, to submit, to be whatever the Dominion wants them to be. You did not promise anything. You simply showed them what you are. On the 3rd day, the Dominion vessels finally moved. They did not announce their departure or offer any final words. They simply powered up their engines and disappeared into faster-than-light travel, leaving the Sentinel alone in the system once more. The relief on the bridge was almost visible. Crew members who had been holding their breath for days finally allowed themselves to relax. But Daniel knew the truth. The Dominion had not forgiven humanity. They had not accepted them. They had simply decided to wait and see. The real test was still ahead. Set course for Earth, he ordered. Maximum speed, we have a lot to report. The journey home took 12 days. The faster-than-light drive had been pushed to its limits during the confrontation, and Moore insisted on running at reduced power to avoid catastrophic failure. It gave the crew time to process what had happened. Some wrote letters to family members that might never be sent. Others gathered in small groups to discuss what they had learned. Everyone understood that the world they were returning to would never be the same. Brooks spent most of the journey compiling the first human database of galactic civilizations. The information had shared was incomplete, but it was more than humanity had ever possessed before. Names, locations, basic cultural information. It was a beginning. There are species out there that might be allies, she told Daniel during a briefing. They are afraid of the Dominion, but they are not hostile to us, and mentioned others who might be sympathetic to younger civilizations. First, we have to survive long enough to find them. Daniel studied the star maps had created. So many worlds, so many possibilities, and so many dangers waiting in the darkness. When we get home, everything is going to change. Earth needs to know what is out there, not just the governments, everyone. This cannot be kept secret. That will cause panic. Maybe, or maybe it will bring us together. We have spent our entire history fighting each other over borders and resources and ideas. Now we know there are bigger threats, bigger challenges. Maybe that knowledge will finally make us see ourselves as one species instead of 100 different nations. Grant was less optimistic. Or it will make things worse. Countries will race to build bigger weapons. Factions will argue about how to respond to the Dominion. We might tear ourselves apart before any alien has a chance to do it for us. That is possible, Daniel admitted. But I choose to believe better of us. We have faced extinction before, ice ages, plagues, wars that should have ended everything. We always found a way through. This time will not be different. The Sentinel emerged from faster-than-light travel on the edge of the solar system. Earth was visible in the distance, a tiny blue dot that held 8 billion souls who had no idea what had just happened. Daniel looked at it through the viewport and felt a strange mix of emotions: pride, fear, hope, determination. "We are receiving transmissions from Earth Command," reported. "They want a full debriefing as soon as we reach orbit." "They will get one, but first patch me through to the global broadcast network. I want to speak to everyone, not just the military, not just the governments, everyone." Hesitated. "Commander, that is not standard protocol. Earth Command will need to approve any public statements." "We do not have time for protocol anymore." Daniel turned to face his crew. "We just learned that we are not alone in the universe. We learned that there are powers out there that could destroy us without effort. And we learned that the only thing standing between humanity and extinction is our ability to prove we are worth saving. That information belongs to every person on Earth, not just the ones in charge." The broadcast went out an hour later. Daniel stood on the bridge of the Sentinel, looking into a camera that would carry his words to every corner of the planet. He did not read from a script. He did not try to soften the truth. He simply told the people of Earth what had happened. He told them about thee and their centuries of observation. He told them about the Dominion and their ancient judgment. He told them that humanity had been given a chance, not a guarantee. And he told them that what happened next was up to all of them. "We are no longer alone," he said at the end. "We never were, but now we know it, and that knowledge changes everything. We can be afraid, we can turn on each other, we can prove the Dominion right about us, or we can do what we have always done. We can survive, we can adapt, we can grow. We can show the galaxy that humanity is worth believing in. The choice is ours, all of ours, and I believe we will make the right one." The transmission ended. Daniel stepped away from the camera and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Dominion was watching. Somewhere out there, they were taking notes. Somewhere out there, 100 other civilizations were waiting to see what this strange young species would do next. Daniel did not know what the future held, but he knew one thing for certain. Humanity would not go quietly into the darkness. They would fight. They would survive. They would prove themselves. Because that was what humans did. It was what they had always done, and nothing in the galaxy was going to change that. The first encounter was over, but the story of humanity among the stars had only just begun.